No one will marry my kind, but we're built for making hybrid. Alien woman reveals sci-fi story. Lyria stood at the edge of the cliff, staring at the city below. The sun of her planet, a pale lavender star, bathed the towers in soft light. From up here, the world seemed peaceful, perfect, even. Yet inside her, there was a storm she could not calm. For years, she had walked among her people, the Veari, admired for her intelligence, her skill, her beauty, but never truly seen. Not the way she wanted, not the way she hoped. Her kind, the Veari, had always prided themselves on perfection. Every child was measured, every skill observed, every decision weighed against what the elders called the line of excellence. They were a proud, advanced people, and on the surface, nothing seemed wrong. But Lyria knew a truth that had made her life lonely. She was different in a way her society could not accept. Though her mind was sharp, her appearance flawless, there was something in her essence that did not fit the standard. And because of it, no one would marry her. Lyria had watched friends and peers take partners, marry, and start families. Their joy should have made her happy, yet each celebration carved a deeper ache in her heart. Invitations to weddings had become tests she dreaded, reminders that no matter what she achieved, no matter how perfect her accomplishments, she would always be alone. It was not that the Veari rejected her outright. They whispered her praises in halls and academies, praised her genius in simulations and projects. Yet when the question of union arose, she was always met with polite refusals or veiled excuses. Not yet, they would say. Perhaps another time. But she knew another time would never come. Tonight she was not thinking of them, she was thinking of him, Ethan. The human scientist had arrived on her planet 2 weeks ago, part of an exchange program that allowed off-worlders to study the Veari's remarkable advancements. He was unlike anyone she had ever met. Where her people valued precision and perfection above all, Ethan valued curiosity, creativity, and empathy. He asked questions that made her think in new ways, and he offered answers that challenged what she had always assumed about herself and her society. She remembered the first day she had met him in the research halls. He had tripped over a wire, almost falling into a pile of Veari equipment. Lyria had caught him before he hit the ground. He had looked up at her, surprised, his green eyes wide behind glasses that seemed comically fragile. Instead of being embarrassed, he had laughed. That small, human laugh had echoed in her mind long after the meeting had ended. Now, as she watched the city, she remembered the words she had whispered to him yesterday, alone in the research lab. "No one will marry my kind," she had said, voice trembling slightly. "But we're built for making hybrid. We're made to bring together the strengths of different worlds. Humans could be perfect for us in ways my people cannot understand." Ethan had paused, clearly weighing her words. Then he had smiled gently. "You mean you're talking about combining traits, creating something new, something better?" "Yes," she had replied, almost too quietly. "But no one will allow it, they will never approve, and yet I cannot help but wonder what could be." It was daring to speak such thoughts aloud. Even among strangers, among scientists from other worlds, there was a risk. Her society valued rules, order, and the preservation of their bloodlines. To even suggest a hybrid project was to invite ridicule, suspicion, or worse. And yet she had found herself drawn to the idea, drawn to Ethan's presence, drawn to the possibility that there was more to life than rules and expectations. Lyria turned from the cliff and walked back to the laboratory, her mind alive with ideas. She had spent years studying genetics, the biological frameworks that defined her species. She had seen patterns, sequences, and structures that her people thought unchangeable, but she knew differently. She had always known differently. The Veari believed themselves perfect, and in many ways they were. But perfection, Lyria thought, could sometimes be a cage. Inside the lab, the hum of machines welcomed her. Screens flickered with charts and sequences, data streams that mapped the very essence of life on her planet. She moved to her workstation and activated the simulation programs. She had begun creating theoretical models, imagining what a hybrid between her people and humans could look like. She had no intention of defying her society openly, at least not yet, but the work gave her hope. Ethan arrived shortly after, his boots tapping softly against the polished floor. He carried a tablet brimming with notes and schematics. "I ran the calculations," he said, eyes bright. "It's actually feasible. The differences aren't as extreme as your council believes. In fact, some traits of humans could complement the Veari perfectly." Lyria felt a spark of excitement. "Show me," she said. Together, they reviewed the data. Ethan suggested minor modifications in simulation parameters, ways to test compatibility without risk. Lyria marveled at his approach. Where the Veyari relied on rigid formulas, Ethan experimented, adapted, and imagined outcomes that seemed impossible. He was not bound by tradition or fear, and it made all the difference. Hours passed unnoticed. They moved from theory to practical steps, mapping sequences, hypothesizing abilities, and imagining futures that neither her society nor any human on Earth could yet envision. Lyria felt a thrill she had not experienced in years. It was more than intellectual curiosity. It was hope. As the artificial lights dimmed to signal the night cycle, Lyria leaned back in her chair, exhausted but exhilarated. She looked at Ethan, who was scribbling notes furiously. "Do you really believe this can work?" she asked softly. "I do," he said without hesitation. "Humans have survived in every environment, adapted to every challenge. Your people have perfected themselves. Together, imagine what we could create, not just in biology but in understanding, in cooperation." She nodded, her heart swelling with a mixture of fear and excitement. The path ahead would be dangerous in its own way. Discovery, innovation, and progress were frowned upon when they challenged tradition. But she felt alive in a way she had never felt before. She had found an ally, a friend, and perhaps something more. Later, alone in her quarters, Lyria gazed out of her window at the sprawling city. The lavender sun had set, leaving streaks of pink and gold across the horizon. She thought about the life her society expected her to live, alone, admired, but never fully connected. And she thought about the possibility Ethan had opened up for her. A small smile touched her lips. She would not give up. She would find a way to explore this path, to challenge the boundaries of her people, to see what hybridization could mean, not just for her, but for the future. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a flicker of hope that she was not alone. Tomorrow, she would continue her work with Ethan. Tomorrow, they would push boundaries, question traditions, and imagine a future that had never existed before. She did not know how her society would react, or what obstacles would appear. But for now, she let herself dream, let herself believe, and let herself hope. For Lyria, this was only the beginning. The next morning, Lyria arrived at the lab with a sense of purpose she had not felt in years. The city outside hummed with routine, the quiet rhythm of a society confident in its own perfection. But inside the laboratory, the air was charged with possibility. She saw Ethan already at his station, eyes scanning through the latest simulations, fingers flying across his tablet. "Good morning," he said, not looking up. "I adjusted the parameters last night. I think we can try a more detailed simulation today." Lyria smiled, heart lifting at the sound of his voice. "Good. Let's see what humans and Veyari could really do together." They worked side by side, moving carefully through each step. Ethan had devised a way to model genetic interactions between humans and Veyari without touching a single physical sample. They relied on virtual simulations, mathematical models, and theoretical constructs. The work required patience and precision, but it also demanded creativity. Lyria found herself enjoying the process more than anything she had done in years. As the hours passed, their conversation drifted from science to ideas and observations. Ethan asked about her childhood, her life as a Veyari, and the traditions that shaped her. Lyria answered honestly, revealing both pride and frustration. She spoke of her isolation, of the weddings she had attended alone, of the whispers and polite refusals she had endured. "I always thought it was me," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought I was flawed, but now I realize it is their rules that are flawed, not me." Ethan looked at her with admiration. "You've been too kind to yourself. You're extraordinary. You've been trapped by their expectations, not by your own abilities." Lyria felt warmth spread through her chest. Humans had a way of speaking that made complex emotions feel simple, clear, and real. For the first time, she felt seen, not for her perfection, but for her mind, her spirit, and her dreams. Their work continued, each breakthrough bringing a new spark of excitement. They discovered ways that human adaptability could complement Veyari intelligence, enhancing problem-solving, creativity, and even emotional understanding. Lyria realized that the Veyari had never considered these traits important. They valued intellect, logic, and genetics above all else, believing their society complete and flawless. But in the human mind, there were strengths they had overlooked. As the day wore on, a gentle tension began to build. Lyria knew that someone could discover their collaboration at any moment. The Vayari Council did not allow such experiments, and the presence of a human in the lab made their work suspicious. If anyone questioned them, they would need to have a clear explanation or risk serious consequences. Despite the risk, Lyria could not stop herself. The project had become more than a scientific endeavor. It was personal. It was a chance to prove that her society's rigid rules were not the only path to excellence. It was a chance to show that humans, in their diversity and creativity, had something valuable to offer the Vayari. By evening, the simulation had reached a significant milestone. Lyria and Ethan had created a theoretical hybrid model that combined the best traits of both species. It was not perfect, but it was promising. The virtual creatures displayed remarkable intelligence, adaptability, and problem-solving abilities. They were more resilient than either species alone. Lyria leaned back in her chair, eyes shining with excitement. "We did it," she said softly. "We've proven it's possible." Ethan smiled, clearly proud. "And we've done it without breaking any rules that would get us in trouble, yet." They laughed quietly, but their moment of triumph was interrupted by a soft chime at the lab door. Lyria froze. Visitors were uncommon, and she immediately felt a flicker of fear. Ethan noticed her hesitation. "It's probably just the security droid," he said, trying to reassure her, but it was not a droid. Standing at the entrance was a young Vayari Council member, his expression formal and curious. "Lyria," he said, his voice polite but firm. "May I have a word?" Lyria felt a tight knot form in her stomach. "Of course," she said, motioning him inside. The council member studied the lab, his eyes lingering on the simulation screens and the data streams. "I have heard whispers," he said carefully. "Rumors that you are working with a human in ways that may violate council regulations. Is this true?" Lyria took a deep breath. "We are conducting simulations only," she said, choosing her words with care. "No physical experiments, no interference with living beings." "It is purely theoretical." The council member raised an eyebrow. "Even so, you are aware that the council does not approve of human collaboration in such matters. The Vayari are cautious for a reason. We cannot allow experiments that may disrupt our social order." Ethan stepped forward. "We are only exploring possibilities, not challenging anyone. Our goal is understanding and improvement." The council member nodded slowly, considering their words. "I will report your actions. Be warned, the council takes such matters seriously. Any misstep could result in restrictions or even exile." With that, he left, leaving a tense silence in the lab. Lyria exhaled slowly, relief mixing with worry. They had not been caught breaking any rules, but the warning was clear. Their work was now under scrutiny. For the first time, Lyria understood the stakes. Her dream of exploring hybrids was no longer just a personal project. It was a challenge to centuries of tradition. And yet, she felt a renewed determination. "We can't stop now," she said quietly. "We've come too far." Ethan nodded. "Then we proceed carefully. We focus on simulations, theory, and data. No risk, just knowledge." They returned to their work, more focused than ever. Days turned into nights, and nights into days, but Lyria hardly noticed the passage of time. The thrill of discovery, the joy of partnership, and the quiet hope of what could be kept her moving forward. One afternoon, Lyria received a message from a colleague in the genetics division, a friend she trusted. The note was brief. "I've heard whispers too, be careful. Some of the council are watching." Lyria felt a chill. It was true, their collaboration had already attracted attention. But instead of fear, she felt resolve. The Vayari might resist, but their rules could not stop the truth. Humans and Vayari together could create something extraordinary. That evening, Ethan looked over the latest simulations. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the screen. "The hybrid model shows resilience in unpredictable environments. It adapts faster than either species alone." This could change everything. Lyria felt a thrill. "They'll never see it coming," she said softly. "They think perfection is fixed, unchanging, but the world, life, it's always evolving." As the sky turned a deep purple, Lyria and Ethan left the lab for a brief walk. The city glowed beneath them, peaceful and unaware of the small revolution happening within its scientific halls. Lyria felt the weight of expectation, the tension of possible discovery, but also the exhilaration of progress. "I've never felt like this before," Lyria admitted. Excited, alive, hopeful, and scared all at once. Ethan smiled. That's how humans feel when they're making something new. It's part of creation, the uncertainty, the thrill, the possibility. She looked at him, realizing how much his perspective had changed her own. She had spent years trying to fit into a society that did not accept her fully. And now, with him, she was free to explore, to imagine, to dream. As they walked, they began discussing the next steps of their simulation. Ethan suggested introducing environmental challenges, scenarios that tested both species' adaptability. Lyria added ideas about emotional intelligence, communication, and problem-solving. Together, they built a virtual world where hybrids could thrive, learn, and grow. They laughed and debated, argued and agreed, and in those moments Lyria felt a deep connection not only to the project but to the human beside her. He did not see her as flawed or different. He saw her as brilliant, capable, and worthy of trust. And in that trust she found a courage she had never known. When they finally returned to the lab, tired but exhilarated, Lyria looked out at the city once more. The world seemed the same, calm and orderly, but inside her everything had changed. The possibility of hybrids, the partnership with Ethan, the challenge to tradition. It was a new beginning. She knew the council's scrutiny would increase, that rumors and suspicions would grow. But for the first time, she believed in a future where humans and Veyari could work together. A future where her uniqueness was a strength, not a curse. And she would not let anyone take that away from her. Days passed quietly, but the tension in the laboratory grew. Lyria and Ethan continued their simulations, each step more daring than the last. The models they created had begun to take shape into something truly remarkable. Hybrid beings that combined the intelligence of the Veyari with the adaptability and creativity of humans. Every time Lyria watched the simulations, her heart raced. She could see possibilities she had never imagined, futures that could reshape her society. But the warnings of the council lingered like shadows in her mind. She knew that curiosity alone would not protect her if the wrong eyes noticed. Every day, she felt the subtle scrutiny of colleagues, the occasional glance that lingered too long, and the quiet hum of the city outside, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Ethan, ever observant, noticed her unease. "You're thinking too much about them," he said one evening as they reviewed the latest simulations. "We can't control what others think. We can only control what we do, what we create." Lyria nodded slowly. "I know, but they have power. The council could end this at any moment, and if that happens, all our work, all our dreams would vanish." Ethan smiled reassuringly. "Then let's make sure it cannot be ignored. Let's show them what is possible before they can stop us." She studied him for a long moment. Humans had a way of seeing the world differently, she realized. They did not fear change the way the Veyari did. They saw potential, possibility, and opportunity. And that perspective had already changed the way she thought, the way she felt. For the next several days, they worked tirelessly, designing a public demonstration of their hybrid project. They would not test it on living beings yet. It would remain a simulation. But the display would show the council and the people of her society that hybridization was not only safe, it was extraordinary. Lyria meticulously prepared the presentation, ensuring every detail highlighted the strengths of both species. She programmed the simulation to show hybrids adapting to difficult terrain, solving complex problems, and learning new skills at astonishing speed. She wanted every observer to see that this was not a threat, but an opportunity, a chance for the Veyari to evolve without losing their essence. On the day of the demonstration, the laboratory was crowded with curious scientists and council observers. Lyria felt a wave of nerves, but she steadied herself. Ethan stood beside her, calm and confident as he always seemed to be. Together, they activated the simulation. The screen came alive with movement. Hybrid figures navigated a virtual world filled with challenges, rocky landscapes, sudden weather changes, complex puzzles, and simulated tasks requiring both logic and creativity. Every obstacle was met with ingenuity, problem-solving, and adaptability. The hybrids used strategies that neither Lyria nor Ethan had anticipated, blending human intuition with Veyari logic. Gasps rippled through the audience. Lyria felt her pulse quicken. She had known the simulation was impressive, but seeing it react in real time, surpassing their expectations, was exhilarating. The council members who had been skeptical leaned forward, eyes wide with astonishment. One of the senior counselors, a stern and precise Vayari named Kale, spoke first. This is unprecedented, he said. The hybrids demonstrate abilities that exceed even the most talented Vayari, and yet they retain the essence of our species. Lyria stepped forward, speaking clearly and confidently. These hybrids are not meant to replace us. They are meant to enhance us, to explore possibilities we cannot achieve alone. Humans bring adaptability, creativity, and emotional insight. Combined with our intelligence and structure, we can create something extraordinary, something that strengthens our society rather than diminishes it. A murmur ran through the room. Some council members looked intrigued, others skeptical, and a few whispered to one another, clearly debating the implications. Ethan added, "The models are safe, theoretical, and non-invasive. We have not used any living subjects. This is a demonstration of potential, not action, but it shows what collaboration can achieve. The possibilities extend beyond genetics. They touch education, technology, and society itself." Lyria felt a sense of pride swell within her. For the first time, she was speaking not just for herself, but for a vision larger than her own life. She was advocating for the future, for progress, and for a society that could embrace change rather than fear it. The room was silent for a long moment. Then one of the younger council members, a sharp and curious Vayari named Selan, spoke. "If what you say is true, if humans can contribute in these ways, then our society has ignored a vast potential. Perhaps it is time to reconsider our rules." A ripple of agreement spread among some of the younger observers, while the older counselors exchanged cautious glances. Kale, the senior counselor, remained thoughtful, his expression unreadable. Lyria knew that change would not come quickly. She understood that tradition and caution ran deep in her people's culture. But this was the first crack in the wall, the first moment when curiosity and innovation had a chance to triumph over rigid conformity. After the demonstration, the council deliberated in private. Lyria and Ethan waited outside, tense but hopeful. When the senior counselor emerged, he addressed them directly. "Your work is remarkable," he said, "and while some among us remain cautious, we cannot ignore the potential benefits. Proceed with caution, but proceed nonetheless. The council will allow continued study under supervision. Your findings will be reviewed, and the hybrid's potential will be considered for future integration." Lyria felt a rush of relief and excitement. They had not only avoided censure, they had gained approval, even if conditional. She looked at Ethan, who gave her a quiet nod of encouragement. Together, they had achieved something that neither tradition nor fear could suppress. In the days that followed, their project gained attention throughout the city. Scientists, scholars, and students came to observe the simulations, eager to understand the possibilities. Lyria found herself explaining the concepts repeatedly, answering questions, and sharing the excitement of discovery. She felt alive in a way she had never known, her isolation replaced by purpose and connection. Yet even as their work progressed, Lyria remained aware of the subtle opposition. Some council members remained skeptical, watching closely for any misstep. She knew that she could not let fear dictate her actions, but she also knew that careful strategy was necessary. The success of their project depended on both brilliance and prudence. One evening, after a long day of demonstrations, Lyria and Ethan walked through the city together. The streets glowed softly under the lavender moon, and the air was filled with the quiet hum of life. They spoke about the future, about the hybrids, and about what could come next. "We've shown them what is possible," Lyria said, "but we still have a long way to go. There are many who will resist, many who will fear what they do not understand." Ethan nodded. "And there always will be, but you've taken the first step. You've opened a door. Now it's a matter of walking through it carefully and wisely." Lyria smiled, feeling a sense of determination settle within her. "I've waited my whole life for this. To be seen, to be understood, to make a difference. I won't let fear stop me now." Ethan reached out and placed a hand gently on hers. "And you won't be alone. We'll face it together." For the first time, Lyria felt the weight of possibility in her hands. The hybrids were not just models on a screen. They were symbols of what humans and Vayari could achieve together. They were proof that collaboration, respect, and ingenuity could overcome fear and tradition. In her heart, Lyria knew that challenges lay ahead. Opposition would rise, questions would be asked, and the path forward would not be easy. But she also knew that this work, the work she shared with Ethan, was worth every risk. She looked out at the city, bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, and imagined the future. A future where Veari and humans could walk side by side, where knowledge and creativity could flourish, and where isolation and fear no longer dictated the course of life. And in that vision, she saw herself no longer alone, no longer sidelined, but standing at the forefront of a new era. The journey was far from over, but for the first time, she felt confident that the future was hers to shape. The next steps would be challenging, but Lyria was ready. She had found an ally, a partner, and a purpose. And together, she and Ethan would continue to push boundaries, to challenge expectations, and to prove that the combination of human ingenuity and Veari brilliance could achieve wonders beyond imagination. The night deepened, and the city slept beneath the stars. But within the laboratory, the simulations continued to run, the hybrids moving, learning, and growing in ways that hinted at a future no one could yet predict. And Lyria, standing beside Ethan, felt a thrill of hope she had never known before. For her people, and for the future, the impossible had begun to take shape. Weeks had passed since the demonstration, and the city of Lyria's people seemed subtly different. Whispers of curiosity replaced hushed skepticism. Scientists, students, and even ordinary citizens discussed the possibilities of collaboration with humans. While not everyone was convinced, a shift had begun. For the first time, the rigid walls of tradition seemed less absolute. Lyria felt a sense of cautious optimism. Each day brought new visitors to the lab, each one eager to learn about the hybrids and the work she had undertaken with Ethan. They asked questions, offered ideas, and in some cases, challenged her thinking. It was exhausting but invigorating. For the first time, she felt her purpose extend beyond herself. Her work could influence the future of her species, and she was no longer alone in carrying that responsibility. Ethan remained by her side, calm and observant as always. His presence reminded her that she did not have to bear the weight of change alone. Together, they reviewed new simulation data, refining the hybrids' abilities, exploring how the combination of human adaptability and Veari intelligence could solve complex problems. Lyria marveled at how seamlessly they worked together, their ideas flowing in unison as though their minds were attuned to the same rhythm. One morning, Lyria received a summons to appear before the council. Her heart skipped a beat. After weeks of progress, she was unsure whether this meant further scrutiny or a recognition of her accomplishments. She shared the news with Ethan, who placed a reassuring hand on hers. "We've done nothing wrong," he said. "Go in with confidence." She nodded, trying to steady her nerves. When she entered the council chamber, she found a room filled with expectant faces. The senior counselor, Kale, sat at the head of the table, his expression unreadable. The younger members whispered among themselves, eyes bright with curiosity. "Lyria," Kale began, "your work with the human has produced results that cannot be ignored. The simulations demonstrate abilities and strategies that exceed the expectations of this council. It is clear that you have discovered something extraordinary." A murmur of approval ran through the room. Lyria felt her chest tighten with anticipation. Kale continued, "However, some members remain concerned. There are fears about disrupting social order, about introducing elements that are unfamiliar or unpredictable. Change is difficult for any society, even one as advanced as ours." Lyria spoke, her voice steady despite the flutter in her stomach. "I understand your concerns. But what we have demonstrated is not a threat. It is a possibility. Humans bring qualities that complement our strengths. Together, we can create hybrids that are stronger, more adaptable, and capable of solving challenges that neither species could face alone. This is not just about genetics. It is about knowledge, creativity, and cooperation." A young council member, Selen, leaned forward. "Your simulations show remarkable results. The hybrids adapt to unexpected challenges, learn quickly, and use strategy in ways that surpass our current understanding. This could advance our society in ways we cannot yet imagine." Kale nodded slowly. "Very well. The council has deliberated and reached a decision. Lyria, you and your human collaborator may continue your work. You will be allowed to expand the simulations and explore practical applications under careful supervision. Your findings will inform future projects and may influence the evolution of our society." Lyria felt a rush of relief and joy. The council had not only acknowledged her work, they had legitimized it. She looked at Ethan, who gave her a quiet, proud smile. Together, they had turned possibility into reality. Over the following weeks, their project flourished. Students and young scientists came to observe, eager to learn from their methods. Lyria and Ethan introduced new scenarios into the simulations, testing how hybrids could respond to environmental changes, complex problem-solving, and social interactions. The results were even more impressive than before. The hybrids learned quickly, collaborated effectively, and demonstrated traits that neither species had fully anticipated. Lyria found herself becoming a mentor as well as a scientist. She guided others, shared insights, and encouraged creative thinking. Her isolation, which had been a constant companion for so many years, had vanished. She was no longer just a solitary figure in a world that refused her place. She was a leader, a visionary, and an inspiration. Even as their work advanced, Lyria remained aware of the subtle opposition. Some members of the council continued to observe, their skepticism clear in quiet comments and careful scrutiny. Yet she felt no fear. She had proven that her work was valuable, and she knew that continued success would gradually win over even the most resistant minds. One evening, after a long day of simulations, Lyria and Ethan walked through the city together. The streets glowed softly under the pale light of the lavender moon. Citizens moved quietly, some glancing curiously at the pair, others whispering about the hybrids. Lyria felt a sense of connection she had never known. She was no longer invisible. She was part of a story that was unfolding, a story that included both her people and humans in ways that had once seemed impossible. Ethan spoke first. "You've done something incredible here, not just the science, but the way you've changed minds." "The Veyari will never forget this," Lyria smiled. "It's not just me, it's us. I could never have done this without you." He shook his head slightly. "You would have done it eventually. Humans have adaptability, yes, but it was your vision, your courage that made this possible." She looked at him, feeling warmth she could hardly describe. Humans and Veyari together, minds working in harmony, had created something greater than the sum of their parts. It was more than science. It was a testament to collaboration, trust, and respect. Days turned into weeks, and the simulations continued to evolve. Lyria and Ethan began exploring broader applications, problem-solving in urban planning, environmental adaptation, and education. They demonstrated that the principles behind the hybrids could improve society in practical, meaningful ways. One afternoon, a young student approached Lyria with a question. "Will humans always be part of our studies?" the student asked, eyes bright with curiosity. Lyria knelt to meet the student's gaze. "Humans bring qualities that complement ours. Together, we can achieve things that neither could do alone. Collaboration is the key to growth, and respect for different strengths is what makes it work." The student nodded thoughtfully, clearly inspired. Lyria felt a sense of fulfillment she had never experienced before. This was why she had persisted, why she had risked scrutiny and isolation. It was not only about proving herself, it was about shaping the future, about creating a society that valued understanding and ingenuity over fear and tradition. One evening, as the city settled into quiet calm, Lyria returned to the laboratory alone. She gazed at the simulations running on the screens, hybrids navigating complex scenarios with ease and creativity. The soft glow of the monitors reflected in her eyes, and she felt a profound sense of satisfaction. For years, she had been unseen, her potential unrecognized. Now she was not only recognized, she was celebrated. Ethan arrived shortly after, carrying a small cup of synthesized tea. "You look deep in thought," he said. "I am," Lyria admitted, smiling softly. "I'm thinking about how far we've come and how much further we can go." "This is just the beginning." He handed her the cup. "To the beginning," he said, raising it slightly. Lyria took it, feeling warmth spread through her chest. She thought of her people, of the council, of the students and scientists who had embraced the possibilities she had once feared would be forbidden. She thought of the hybrids, not just as simulations, but as symbols of what humans and Veyari could achieve together. "To the beginning," she echoed. In the days that followed, their work expanded further. Young scientists were assigned to assist in refining simulations, and collaborations with humans from other worlds began to take shape. Lyria became a mentor and a leader, guiding new generations to think beyond boundaries and challenge old assumptions. Her isolation was gone. She was no longer defined by what her society had denied her. She was defined by what she had created and the possibilities she had unlocked. One evening, after a particularly productive day, Lyria and Ethan stood on the balcony of the laboratory, looking out over the city. The lavender sun had set, leaving the sky streaked with soft colors. Lyria felt a sense of peace and hope she had never known. "Do you ever wonder," she said quietly, "what the hybrids will become one day?" Ethan smiled. "I do. But whatever they become, they will carry a part of both our worlds. They will be proof that collaboration, understanding, and respect can achieve wonders." Lyria nodded, feeling a swell of pride. She had spent years wondering if she would ever find her place, if she would ever be recognized or appreciated. Now she knew that place was not given, it was created. Through courage, creativity, and partnership, she had carved a path for herself and for her society. As the night deepened, Lyria and Ethan returned to their workstations. The simulations continued to run, hybrids learning, adapting, and thriving in ways that promised a future full of possibility. Lyria knew challenges would continue, skepticism would arise, and tradition would resist. But she also knew that humans and Veyari working together could overcome any obstacle. And for the first time in her life, Lyria felt truly free. Not free from rules or scrutiny, but free to dream, to create, and to lead. She had proven that ingenuity, collaboration, and courage could shape the future. She had proven that even in a world bound by tradition, change was possible. The lavender moon rose high, casting a gentle glow over the city. Lyria stood beside Ethan, watching the simulations unfold. The hybrids moved gracefully, intelligently, and creatively, symbols of a future that was brighter, stronger, and full of potential. And in that quiet moment, Lyria smiled, knowing that she had finally found her place, not just among her people, but in the possibilities of what humanity and Veyari could achieve together.